Millionaire invited his childless ex-wife for Christmas to humiliate her, and she showed up with triplets. He watched 3 small children step through his door. Children with his exact hazel eyes, his family dimple, his distinctive birthmark at the right temple. His ex-wife Piper stood calmly behind them, her hand resting gently on one small shoulder. She met his gaze across the silent room. Garrett's voice came out strangled. "What is this?" Piper's response was steady, clear enough for everyone to hear. "These are your children, Garrett. Declan, Hadley, and Sutton Hayes Collins. They're 4 years old. The IVF cycle worked after all. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you left me for being defective." The room erupted in gasps. Garrett's new wife, Kendall, grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his expensive suit jacket. "This is insane. This is some kind of scheme." One of the little girls, with wild curls framing a face that was an exact feminine version of Garrett's childhood photos, looked up at him with curious eyes. "Are you our daddy? Mommy has pictures of you. You look just like us." Garrett couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The perfect Christmas party he'd orchestrated specifically to humiliate his childless ex-wife had just detonated in his face. Because she wasn't childless. She'd never been childless. And these 3 small strangers staring at him with his own eyes were about to destroy everything he'd built. But here's what Garrett didn't know yet. These children weren't going to destroy his life. They were going to save it. Have you ever set up the perfect moment to prove someone wrong, only to discover you were the one living a lie? Have you ever been so sure you were the victim of your own story that you never realized you were actually the villain? What would you do if everything you built to showcase your success crumbled in 60 seconds, revealing that you'd been chasing empty things while the real treasure slipped through your fingers? This is a story about a man who measured his worth by his bank account and lost everything that actually mattered. It's about a woman who was called broken but built something beautiful anyway. And it's about 3 small children who taught a millionaire what legacy really means. But before we dive into how one Christmas party changed 6 lives forever, I need you to do something. If you've ever made a mistake you thought you couldn't come back from, hit that like button right now. If you believe people can change, that redemption is possible even when you've hurt the people you should have loved. Subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever gotten a second chance you didn't deserve? Let's build a community of redemption stories right here. Every week I bring you stories that don't just entertain, they transform. They remind us that our worst moments don't have to define us, that courage looks like admitting you were wrong, that love is stronger than pride. Now let's get into this story. Because what you just heard, that explosive moment when Garrett's perfect world shattered, that didn't come out of nowhere. To understand how a successful real estate developer became the kind of man who weaponizes Christmas parties, who invites his ex-wife specifically to parade his happiness in front of her pain, we need to go back to when Garrett Hayes actually believed he was a good man making practical decisions. Back to the moment he destroyed his first marriage and convinced himself he was the victim. 5 years before that catastrophic Christmas party, Garrett and Piper sat in a fertility specialist's office in downtown Denver. October rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the medical building. 43 floors below, the city moved on with its business, unaware that in this small consultation room, a marriage was ending. Dr. Richardson sat across from them, her expression professionally sympathetic. She'd delivered disappointing news to hundreds of couples. She'd perfected the tone, gentle but clinical. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, but after 3 years of trying naturally and 2 years of increasingly aggressive interventions, I think we need to have a realistic conversation about your options moving forward. Piper's hands twisted in her lap. Her voice was barely above a whisper. So the last IVF cycle didn't work. Dr. Richardson glanced at her computer screen. The embryo quality was excellent. Everything looked promising. But no, you're not pregnant. Sometimes there's no clear medical explanation. We call it unexplained infertility. It doesn't mean impossible. It just means we haven't identified the specific barrier. What are the odds if we try again? Garrett asked. His voice was flat, emotionless. He'd already made his decision. This question was just procedure. Dr. Richardson hesitated. Statistically, after this many failed cycles, the odds of success with another round are less than 15%. But I've seen miracles happen. I've had patients succeed on their 6th, 7th, even 8th attempt. 15%. Garrett stood up abruptly. Thank you for your time, doctor. We'll discuss our options and get back to you. Piper looked up at him, confusion and hope warring on her face. We're not deciding now. We're done here. Garrett's tone left no room for argument. He walked out of the office without waiting for her. They sat in Garrett's Tesla in the parking garage for 20 minutes. Rain sheeted down the windshield, distorting the concrete and fluorescent lights into abstract patterns. Piper cried silently. Garrett stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. Finally, he spoke. I can't do this anymore. Piper turned to him, mascara streaking her cheeks. Can't do what? The treatments? We could take a break, maybe try a different clinic, maybe look into other options. Other options? Like what? Garrett's voice was cold. Adoption? Yes. Piper's voice rose with desperate hope. Garrett, there are so many children who need homes. We could adopt. We could be parents. Isn't that what matters? I want my own children. Garrett turned to look at her directly. His hazel eyes, the same eyes that would later stare back at him from 3 small faces, were hard. My own bloodline. The Hayes family legacy doesn't continue through some stranger's DNA. My father didn't build a real estate empire so I could hand it to children with no genetic connection to our family. Piper flinched as if he'd slapped her. So, what are you saying? I'm saying I've given this marriage everything, Piper. I've been patient. I've supported you through every disappointing appointment, every failed cycle, every month of hope followed by devastation. But I'm 34 years old. I want children. I want a family. I want what every man deserves, a legacy. You talk about children like they're a business acquisition. Piper's voice shook. What about love? What about our marriage? What about me? This isn't about you. Garrett's response was quick, rehearsed. He'd been having this conversation in his head for months. This is about biology, about basic human function. I married you believing we'd have a family together. You can't give me that. That's not your fault, but it's also not my responsibility to sacrifice what I need because your body doesn't work the way it should. My body doesn't work the way it should. Piper repeated the words slowly, letting them sink into her skin like poison. That's how you see me, as defective. I didn't say defective. You didn't have to. Piper turned away from him, looking out at the rain. So, what now? We just give up? 5 years of marriage over because I can't produce an heir for the Hayes empire? I'm filing for divorce. Garrett's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing a failed business venture rather than the end of their marriage. You'll be well taken care of financially. The house in Boulder, a substantial settlement, half of everything we've accumulated. I'm not a monster, Piper. I just need to move forward with someone who can give me what you can't. Someone who can. Piper laughed, but it was a broken sound. You've already met her, haven't you? Garrett didn't answer, which was answer enough. Piper turned back to face him, and something in her expression had changed. The desperate hope was gone, replaced by a cold clarity. Who is she? That's not relevant. Who is she, Garrett? Kendall Reeves. We met at the Downtown Development fundraiser last month. She's a marketing consultant, 27 years old. And before you ask, no, nothing has happened. But she's made it clear she's interested, and she wants children. 27. Piper's voice was hollow. A decade younger than me. How convenient. This isn't about age. It's about compatibility, about shared goals. Kendall understands what I need from a partnership. You mean she has a uterus that might work better than mine? That's crude, but accurate. Piper reached for the door handle. I'll make this easy for you, Garrett. File your divorce papers. Marry your 27-year-old marketing consultant. Have your perfect babies and your perfect legacy. But someday, when you're lying awake at night in whatever mansion you're building, to impress people you don't actually like, I hope you remember this moment. I hope you remember that you had someone who loved you, really loved you, not your money or your status or your genetic material. And you traded it for a fantasy. She got out of the car and walked into the rain without looking back. Garrett sat alone in the parking garage, watching her figure disappear. He felt a brief flutter of something that might have been regret. But he pushed it down, replaced it with certainty. He was making the right choice. A man needed children. A man needed legacy. Piper couldn't give him that. This was practical, not cruel. He had no idea that in 3 weeks, Piper would take a pregnancy test with, shaking hands, and discovered that the IVF cycle had worked after all. That her body, declared inadequate, was growing not 1 but 3 tiny humans. that his children, the legacy he claimed to desperately need, were already forming while he planned his new life with someone else. But that revelation was still weeks away. Right now, in this moment, Garrett Hayes drove out of that parking garage believing he was the victim of biology and bad luck. He called his lawyer before he even got on the highway. He texted Kendall that evening. Within 6 months, he'd be married to her in a ceremony featured in Colorado Living magazine. The divorce was swift. Garrett's guilt over leaving translated into generous financial terms. Piper got the Craftsman-style house in Boulder, a trust fund that would provide comfortable living, indefinitely, and half of everything they'd accumulated during their 7-year marriage. What she didn't get was her dignity. Garrett told everyone who would listen that he'd had no choice. My ex-wife couldn't have children. I want a family. What was I supposed to do? Give up on being a father? His friends nodded sympathetically. His business partners assured him he'd made the difficult but necessary decision. His father, the cold architect of Garrett's obsession with legacy, clapped him on the shoulder. You did the right thing, son. A man's worth is measured by what he leaves behind. 6 months after the divorce, Garrett married Kendall in an elaborate ceremony at the Four Seasons. The wedding photos showcased a couple who looked perfect together, both beautiful, both successful, both committed to building the kind of life that looked good in magazines. In her interview with Colorado Living, Kendall said, "I'm so excited to start fresh with Garrett and build the family he's always dreamed of. We're already working with the best fertility specialists in New York. We want everything to be perfect." The journalist hadn't asked about Piper by name, but everyone knew who Kendall was contrasting herself against. The young, fertile new wife versus the defective ex who'd failed at a woman's most basic function. Piper read the article in her Boulder home, 3 months pregnant with triplets. Her body swelling with the children Garrett had claimed to desperately want. She'd made her decision by then. She wouldn't tell him. Couldn't tell him. Not because she wanted revenge, though there was some of that in her heart, but because she couldn't bear the thought of her children growing up with a father whose love was conditional, who measured worth by biology and bloodlines, who discarded people who didn't serve his needs. She consulted a lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, who specialized in family law. Rebecca reviewed the details carefully. Colorado law typically requires paternal notification, but there are exceptions. Did Garrett make any statements during your marriage about refusing to raise children conceived through certain methods? Piper thought back to their many painful conversations. He said multiple times, including in marriage counseling, that he would never adopt, that he would only raise children who were biologically his, that anything else would be accepting someone else's cast-offs. Rebecca made notes. And did he explicitly reject the final IVF cycle? Did he make it clear he was done with attempts at pregnancy? He walked out of the fertility clinic, filed for divorce 3 days later. He told me I couldn't give him children, and he needed to move on with someone who could. We have documentation of all this. Rebecca nodded slowly. This is complicated, but there's legal precedent. Given his explicit rejection of the pregnancy attempts and his abandonment of the marriage specifically because of fertility issues, you could argue that notification would be detrimental to the children's welfare. He made his choice before they were conceived. The fact that the cycle succeeded after he'd already left doesn't obligate you to force a father on these children who clearly articulated he wanted nothing to do with this possibility. Is that ethical? Piper asked quietly. Ethics aren't always black and white. Rebecca's voice was gentle. You're not keeping children from a father who wants them. You're protecting children from a father who made it very clear that his love had conditions, who abandoned their mother for the crime of infertility. You can always tell him later when the children are older and you're stronger. But right now, you get to make the choice that prioritizes their welfare. Piper made her choice. She raised her children alone, with help from her parents, close friends, and eventually Jade, the nanny who became family. She never spoke badly of Garrett to the triplets. She kept photos of him in their rooms. She told them their father was very busy, that he lived far away, but that he looked just like them. When Hadley asked why Daddy never visited, Piper said, "Sometimes grown-ups make choices that are hard to understand, but you are so loved, sweetheart. You and your brother and sister are the best things that ever happened to me." The children grew up secure, happy, surrounded by love, even in their modest home. They had birthday parties in the backyard and holiday traditions that cost nothing but meant everything. Piper finished her graduate degree in environmental law, working from home around nap times and preschool schedules. She published articles, consulted for conservation nonprofits, built a career that mattered. Meanwhile, Garrett built his empire. Hayes Property Group expanded aggressively, transforming Denver's skyline with luxury developments. He accumulated wealth, status, magazine features, political connections. His marriage to Kendall looked perfect from the outside, all Instagram-worthy vacations and charity galas. But they couldn't get pregnant. 18 months of expensive fertility treatments produced nothing. The best specialists in New York ran every test. Everything looked perfect. But month after month, Kendall's pregnancy tests came back negative. She started to panic. This wasn't the plan. She was young, healthy, supposed to be fertile. The whole point of their marriage was to give Garrett the children his first wife couldn't. "Maybe it's you," she said one night after another failed cycle. "Maybe you're the problem, not Piper." Garrett's face darkened. "I'm not the problem. We tested everything. My numbers are excellent." "Then why isn't this working?" Kendall's voice rose with frustration. "We've spent $100,000 on treatments. I've taken hormones that made me crazy. I've had procedures, and nothing. These things take time. We don't have time." Kendall stood up, pacing their bedroom. "I'm not getting any younger. What if I can't give you children either? Are you going to leave me too? Trade me in for a 22-year-old? Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being realistic. You have a pattern, Garrett. When things don't go your way, you walk away. That's not fair, isn't it?" Kendall turned to face him. "You built our entire relationship on the promise that I could give you what Piper couldn't. What happens if I fail too?" "You won't fail." Garrett's voice was firm, but doubt had crept in. The thought had occurred to him too. What if the problem had been him all along? What if Piper's body had been fine and he destroyed his marriage for nothing? He pushed the thought away, refused to examine it. Instead, he doubled down on his narrative. Piper had been defective. Kendall would succeed. He just needed to be patient. But patience wasn't Garrett's strength. Control was. Success was. Winning was. And the longer Kendall failed to get pregnant, the more he needed to prove that leaving Piper had been the right choice. Which brought him to the idea for the Christmas party. It was Kendall who first suggested inviting Piper. They were planning the 5th annual Hayes Christmas Gala, an event that had become legendary in Colorado social circles. 200 guests, $20,000 budget, the kind of party. That made social media explode and business connections solidify. "We should invite your ex-wife," Kendall said casually one evening, scrolling through potential guest lists on her tablet. Garrett looked up from his laptop. "Why would we do that?" "Because it would be the ultimate power move." Kendall's eyes gleamed. "Think about it. We invite her to our spectacular home, surrounded by successful families. We announce that our fertility treatments are working. We show her and everyone else exactly what she lost when she couldn't give you children." "We're not actually pregnant yet," Garrett pointed out. "Not yet. But Dr. Morrison said this latest round looked extremely promising. We could strongly imply that we're expecting. People don't need to know the details. And even if we're not officially pregnant by Christmas, just seeing our life, our success, our future, it will destroy her." Garrett considered this. Part of him recognized the cruelty, but another part, the part that had been quietly doubting his choices, desperately needed the validation. "You really think she'd come? Why wouldn't she?" Kendall smiled. "She probably thinks she's moved on, that she's fine. She teaches at some university, right? Lives in that tiny house in Boulder. She probably tells herself she's happy. Seeing the truth will shatter that delusion. You've thought about this a lot. I want you to have closure." Kendall moved to sit next to him, running her fingers through his hair. "You left her, but you've never really closed that chapter. This would do it. One night where she has to face what her inadequacy cost her. Then we can all move forward." Garrett let himself be convinced. Or maybe he convinced himself, using Kendall as permission for what he already wanted. Either way, the invitation went out. Piper Collins received the cream cardstock with gold lettering in early December. She stared at it for a long time, reading between the lines. This wasn't a genuine invitation. This was a summons to her own humiliation. Garrett wanted her to see his perfect new life, his perfect new wife, his imminent perfect family. She should decline. The healthy thing would be to throw the invitation away and never think about it again. But her children had been asking more questions about their father. Declan wanted to know why they had Daddy's last name but never saw him. Hadley asked if Daddy knew she'd learned to read. Sutton wondered if Daddy had the same birthmark he did. Piper had always known this day would come. The day when keeping the secret became more harmful than revealing the truth. Her children deserved to know their father. And Garrett, for all his flaws, deserved to know he had the legacy he'd claimed to want so desperately. She called Rebecca, her lawyer. "I'm thinking about telling Garrett about the children." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "What changed?" "He invited me to a Christmas party, specifically to show off his perfect life and make me feel inadequate for being childless. It seems like the right time for the truth. That's quite the revelation venue. You sure you want to do it so publicly?" "He made our divorce public. He told everyone I was defective. Fair is fair. I'm not sure fairness should be your primary motivation here." "What about the children?" "They've been asking about him more. They're 4 now, old enough to start understanding. And honestly, Rebecca, I'm tired. Tired of carrying this secret. Tired of protecting a man who didn't protect me. Tired of wondering if I'm doing the right thing by keeping his children from him. So this isn't about revenge. It's about truth." Piper's voice was firm. "He orchestrated this party to humiliate me for being childless. I'm simply going to show him I'm not." Rebecca sighed. "You'll need to prepare the children. This will be overwhelming for them." "I know. I'll talk to them, help them understand, and I'll have Jade with me for support." "What about after?" "Garrett will want custody, visitation. This opens a huge legal situation. Then we'll handle it." Piper felt a strange calm settle over her. "I've been making all the decisions alone for 4 years. Maybe it's time he stepped up and participated." Over the next 2 weeks, Piper prepared her children for the biggest moment of their young lives. She sat them down in the living room, their favorite space with the worn couch and handmade artwork on the walls. "Do you remember how we've talked about your daddy? How I've shown you pictures?" 3 small heads nodded. They sat close together on the couch, the way they always did when something felt serious. "Well, we're going to meet him. Really meet him. In person." Hadley's eyes went wide. "Really? When?" "In 2 weeks. There's a big Christmas party at his house. We're all going to go." "All of us?" Declan asked, his analytical mind already working. "You and me and Hadley and Sutton?" "Yes, all of us together." "Is he going to live with us now?" Sutton's voice was small, uncertain. "No, sweetheart." Piper pulled him close. "Your daddy and I aren't married anymore. We don't live together. But he should know about you. And you should know him." "Why didn't he know about us before?" Hadley asked. The question Piper had been dreading. "Because things were complicated." Piper chose her words carefully. "When you were born, Daddy was building a different life. I made a choice to raise you by myself for a while. But now you're getting bigger, asking more questions. It's time for him to meet the amazing children he has. What if he doesn't like us?" Sutton's fear was the fear Piper had been carrying for 4 years. "Oh, baby." Piper knelt in front of her children, gathering all 3 into her arms. "He's going to love you. You're smart and funny and kind and creative. You're the best kids in the world. We look like him, right?" Declan touched his own face, the face that was indeed a small-scale version of Garrett's. "You said we have his eyes and his smile." "You do. You look so much like him, which is why when he sees you, he's going to know right away that you're his children." "Is his house really big?" Hadley's mind had already moved on to logistics. "Yes, very big. Bigger than Mrs. Martinez's house?" "Much bigger." "Wow." Hadley's eyes were saucers. "Can we play in it?" "We'll see." Piper smiled. "This is going to be a grown-up party. Lots of people we don't know. But I need you all to be on your very best behavior. Can you do that?" 3 solemn nods. "And I need you to know something important." Piper made sure she had all their attention. "No matter what happens at this party, no matter how Daddy reacts, I love you. You are the best things that ever happened to me. Nothing will ever change that. We love you too, Mommy." Sutton pressed his face against her shoulder. "Are you nervous?" Declan asked with his characteristic perception. "A little bit," Piper admitted. "This is a big change for everyone. It's okay to be nervous." Hadley patted her mother's arm with 4-year-old wisdom. "You told us that. You said being brave means doing scary things anyway." "You're right. I did say that." Piper felt tears sting her eyes. "When did you get so smart?" "We're 4. Hadley said it like it explained everything. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Piper bought the children new outfits for the party. She practiced with them how to introduce themselves, how to behave in a fancy setting, how to handle meeting lots of new people. Jade helped her plan the logistics. "I'll come with you for support. I'll stay in the background, but I'll be there if the kids need anything." "Thank you." Piper squeezed her friend's hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd manage. You always do. But you don't have to do it alone anymore." The night before the party, Piper barely slept. She lay awake thinking about all the possible ways this could go wrong. Garrett could deny they were his. He could accuse her of lying, scheming, gold-digging. He could refuse to acknowledge them publicly. He could break her children's hearts. But he could also step up, recognize them, want to know them, become the father they deserved. Piper didn't know which outcome she was hoping for. Both terrified her in different ways. Meanwhile, in Aspen, Garrett supervised the final preparations for his party. Everything had to be perfect. The 20-foot Christmas tree had been decorated by professionals, every ornament placed with precision. Ice sculptures were arriving in the morning. The caterer had prepared a menu designed to photograph beautifully. The photographer was scheduled to document everything. "This is going to be spectacular." Kendall stood in the great room, surveying their work. "Everyone is going to be so jealous. That's the point." Garrett smiled. "Success isn't just about having it. It's about other people seeing you have it. And when we make our announcement," Kendall's hand drifted to her flat stomach, "it's going to be perfect." They weren't pregnant. Their latest IVF cycle had failed 3 weeks earlier. But they decided to strongly imply that good news was coming, just enough to plant the suggestion without outright lying. "What time did Piper please reply for?" Garrett asked casually. 8 o'clock. Fashionably late, or maybe she's dreading it. Kendall laughed. "Can you imagine how she feels right now, knowing she has to walk into this house, see all of this, and pretend she's fine?" Part of Garrett felt a twinge of discomfort, but he pushed it down. Piper had failed him. This wasn't cruelty. This was consequences. He had no idea that at that exact moment, 200 miles away in Boulder, Piper was tucking 3 small children into bed. Children who carried his DNA, his features, his legacy. Children who would walk through his door tomorrow night and change everything he thought he knew about his life. Sometimes the universe has a sense of irony. Sometimes karma doesn't come as punishment, but as revelation. And sometimes the thing you thought you wanted most is standing right in front of you, just not in the package you expected. Garrett Hayes was about to learn all of that in the most public, most humiliating, most transformative way possible. But first, he had to make it through one more night of believing he was the victim instead of the villain. One more night of thinking his choices had been justified. One more night of sleeping soundly in his mansion, unaware that 3 small people he'd never met were about to become the most important part of his life. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, both Garrett and Piper lay awake in their separate homes, preparing for a confrontation that would define the rest of their lives. The stage was set. The guests were invited. The children were ready. All that remained was for the curtain to rise on the most dramatic Christmas party Colorado had ever seen. Saturday morning arrived with fresh snow blanketing the Colorado Rockies. Garrett woke at 6, too anxious to sleep. He stood at the window of his master bedroom, watching the sun rise over snow-covered peaks, and felt a surge of satisfaction. Today was the day. Today, everyone would see proof that he'd made the right choice. Beside him, Kendall stirred and reached for her phone. The photographer confirmed for 3 o'clock. She wants to get shots of the house in natural light before guests arrive. Perfect. Garrett moved toward the bathroom. "I have a few calls to make this morning. The Wilson deal needs my signature before Monday." "On a Saturday." Kendall's voice carried a hint of irritation. "The party is in 12 hours. The party doesn't start until 6. I have time. This is exactly what I'm talking about." Kendall sat up, her auburn hair mussed from sleep. "You never stop working. Even on days that are supposed to be about us, about our life together, you're thinking about deals. Those deals pay for this life." Garrett's voice was sharp. "They pay for this house, this party, the fertility treatments, everything you post on Instagram." Kendall's face flushed. "I contribute too. My marketing consulting brings in 6 figures. I'm not diminishing your contribution. I'm simply saying that my work is what allows us to live like this. A few hours on a Saturday morning doesn't seem unreasonable." "Fine. Do your calls." Kendall threw back the covers. "I'll handle the party preparations alone, like I handle everything else." She disappeared into the bathroom. closing the door with more force than necessary. Garrett sighed. Their marriage had become a series of these small battles, each one about something trivial but actually about everything underneath. The unspoken pressure of failed fertility treatments, the growing sense that their partnership was built on a faulty foundation, the reality that they didn't actually like each other very much. But today wasn't about examining his marriage. Today was about proving that marriage number 2 was superior to marriage number 1. Today was about validation. He made his calls from his home office, signing digital documents and reviewing contracts while staff transformed his house into a winter wonderland. He could hear Kendall's voice directing the florist, the caterer, the ice sculpture team. She was good at this part, the performance of perfection. Whatever problems existed in their private life disappeared when there was an audience to impress. At noon, his business partner Felix called. "Tell me you're not actually going through with this party to humiliate Piper." Garrett leaned back in his leather chair. "I'm hosting my annual Christmas gala. If Piper feels uncomfortable seeing my success, that's not my responsibility. You invited her specifically to make her feel bad. Don't pretend this is innocent. I invited an old friend to a social event. That's all. Garrett, I've known you 15 years. Felix's voice was firm. I was there when you and Piper were happy. I watched you change during the fertility struggles. I saw how cruel you became at the end. And now you're using a Christmas party as a weapon. It's beneath you. She couldn't give me children. I had to move on. She didn't fail you, Garrett. Biology is random. The fact that you couldn't have children together doesn't make her defective. I never said defective. You said it constantly, to me, to our friends, to anyone who would listen. You rewrote history to make yourself the victim and her the villain. And now you've orchestrated this public humiliation to cement that narrative." Garrett felt a flash of anger. "Why did you accept the invitation if you disapprove so much?" "Because I'm hoping seeing Piper will remind you of who you used to be. Before you became this person, I became successful. You became hollow." Felix's words landed hard. "Success is meaningless if you're empty inside. And Garrett, from where I'm standing, you're very empty." After Felix hung up, Garrett sat alone in his office for a long time. The words stung because they touched something he'd been avoiding. The truth was, he didn't feel successful. He felt like he was constantly performing success, constantly proving it, constantly looking for external validation that never quite filled the void inside. But acknowledging that would mean acknowledging that leaving Piper had been a mistake, that prioritizing bloodline over love had cost him something irreplaceable, that his entire second marriage was a performance piece with no substance. He couldn't afford to think like that. So he pushed it down, stood up, and went to check on party preparations. The house looked spectacular. White roses and silver ribbons adorned every surface. The Christmas tree glittered with thousands of tiny lights. Ice sculptures of angels flanked the entrance. The caterers had set up elegant serving stations throughout the main floor. Everything was perfect. "You've outdone yourself." Garrett found Kendall in the kitchen, reviewing final details with the head caterer. She turned, her earlier irritation replaced by the smile she wore for public consumption. "This party is going to be legendary. Everyone will be talking about it for months. That's what we want. And when Piper sees all of this," Kendall's smile sharpened, "well, that will just be an added bonus." By 3 o'clock, the photographer arrived and began capturing every perfect detail. Garrett and Kendall posed together in front of the Christmas tree, by the fireplace, on the grand staircase. They looked like a magazine spread, both beautiful, both successful, both performing happiness. So convincingly that the photographer commented on their obvious chemistry. "You two are such a beautiful couple." The photographer adjusted her lens. "You can see how much you love each other." Kendall beamed. "We're very lucky." Garrett smiled on cue, but inside, he felt nothing. He looked at Kendall and saw a business partner, a social accessory, someone who looked good in photos. He didn't see love. He wasn't sure he'd ever seen love when he looked at her. Had he felt it with Piper? He tried to remember. Yes, in the beginning, before the fertility struggles consumed everything. There had been moments of genuine connection, real intimacy, actual partnership. They'd hiked together, cooked together, talked for hours about everything and nothing. When had that changed? When had he started seeing her as a vessel for children instead of a person he loved? Stop. Garrett shut down that line of thinking. Nostalgia was dangerous. The past was the past. Piper had failed to give him what he needed. He'd moved on. End of story. Guests began arriving at 6 o'clock precisely. They came in designer gowns and tailored suits, carrying expensive bottles of wine and effusive compliments. Garrett and Kendall stationed themselves near the entrance, greeting each arrival with practiced warmth. "This is absolutely stunning." Patricia Montgomery, a prominent Denver philanthropist, air-kissed Kendall's cheeks. "You've created magic here." "Thank you so much." Kendall's smile was radiant. "We wanted to celebrate the season and share our blessings with the people we care about." "And I hear congratulations may be in order?" Patricia's eyebrows arched meaningfully. Kendall exchanged a glance with Garrett. "We're very hopeful about some exciting news in the near future. Our fertility specialist is extremely optimistic." Patricia clasped her hands together. "How wonderful. You know, I always thought it was such a shame about Garrett's first marriage. But everything happens for a reason, doesn't it? Now you'll have the family he always wanted." The casual cruelty in her sympathy made Garrett's stomach turn slightly. But he nodded. Some things work out the way they're meant to. As more guests arrived, Garrett kept glancing at his watch. 7 o'clock, 7:15, 7:30. No sign of Piper. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she'd realized coming was masochistic and decided to stay home. Part of him felt disappointed. He'd built this whole evening around her presence. Without her witness, the validation felt incomplete. At 7:45, his phone buzzed with a text from gate security. "Miss Collins is approaching. She has additional passengers in her vehicle. 3 small children. Should I let her through?" Garrett stared at the message, confusion overriding everything else. Children? What children? Had Piper remarried without anyone knowing? Adopted despite his cruel comments about it? Borrowed someone else's kids as props? He texted back, "Let her through." He found Kendall holding court with a group of her influencer friends, all of them sipping signature cocktails and taking carefully angled photos. Piper just arrived. She brought children. Kendall's perfectly contoured face showed a flash of concern. "What children?" "I don't know. Maybe she adopted. Maybe she remarried quietly. Find out before you give your speech." Kendall's voice was sharp. "If she's trying to steal our thunder by showing up with some adopted kids to prove she has a family too, we need to be prepared." Garrett nodded and moved toward the entrance, his heart rate increasing. Through the crowd of guests, he watched the front door open. His butler appeared, taking coats from new arrivals. Then he saw her. Piper stepped through the doorway, and Garrett's breath caught. She looked exactly as he remembered, but different. She wore a simple midnight blue velvet dress, nothing designer, nothing flashy. Her honey-colored hair was pulled into a soft updo. No dramatic makeup, no expensive jewelry. Just Piper, radiating a quiet dignity that had nothing to do with money or status. But it was her expression that struck him. She wasn't nervous or uncomfortable. She looked calm, centered, almost serene, like she knew something he didn't. Behind her, a woman in simple black, clearly a nanny or assistant, helped 3 small children remove their winter coats. Garrett's world stopped. 3 children stood in his entrance hall, looking around with wide eyes. 2 girls and a boy, all around 4 years old. They wore coordinating outfits, the boy in a tiny suit with a burgundy bow tie, the girls in burgundy and navy dresses. But it was their faces that made Garrett's champagne glass start to shake in his hand. They had his eyes. Exact replicas of the hazel eyes he saw in the mirror every morning, complete with the distinctive gold flecks around the pupils. They had his dimple, the Hayes family dimple that appeared in his left cheek when he smiled, that his father had, that his grandfather had. One of the boys had his birthmark, a small distinctive mark at the right temple, usually hidden by Garrett's hairline but visible in childhood photos. They looked like someone had taken Garrett's childhood photos and brought them to life. They were living, breathing copies of him at age 4. The room was starting to notice. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Someone gasped. Piper met his eyes across the crowded room. She bent down, speaking quietly to the children, then straightened and began walking toward him. The children followed, holding hands in a chain. Garrett's mind raced through impossible explanations. This couldn't be what it looked like. It was biologically impossible. Piper couldn't have children. That's why their marriage ended. These children couldn't be his because Piper had been infertile. Except the evidence was walking toward him with his own face staring back at him 3 times over. The crowd parted, creating a path between them. The room had gone almost completely silent. 200 guests watched the scene unfold with undisguised fascination. Garrett tried to speak, but no sound came out. He cleared his throat, tried again. His voice came out strangled. "Piper." "Hello, Garrett." Her voice was steady, clear. "Thank you for the invitation." His eyes dropped to the children, then back to her face. "Who are these children?" Piper's hand rested gently on one small shoulder. "These are your children, Declan, Hadley, and Sutton Hayes Collins. They're 4 years old." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Garrett felt Kendall appear at his side, her nails digging into his arm. "What?" Kendall's voice was shrill. "This is insane." "What is she talking about?" Piper continued calmly, as if delivering a weather report instead of detonating a bomb. "The final IVF cycle we did before you left me, it worked after all. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after our divorce was finalized. Triplets. The doctors called it a medical miracle." "No." Garrett's voice was barely a whisper. "That's impossible. You couldn't get pregnant. We tried for years. Apparently we just needed patience." Piper's voice carried a hint of irony. "Sometimes things take time. Sometimes they work right when you've given up hope." One of the little girls, with wild curls and Garrett's exact facial structure, looked up at him with open curiosity. "Are you our daddy? Mommy has pictures of you. You look just like us." Garrett stared down at her. This small person with his eyes, his dimple, his features. She looked so much like his childhood photos that it was disorienting, like looking at a mirror that reflected the past instead of the present. "This is a scheme." Kendall's voice rose, drawing attention from every corner of the room. "You're lying. These aren't his children. This is some elaborate con to get money. DNA tests are available whenever Garrett wants them." Piper's voice remained calm, though I think the resemblance speaks for itself. 3 sets of identical hazel eyes. The haze, dimple. Sutton even has the family birthmark at his right temple. Multiple guests pulled out phones, zooming in on the children's faces, then looking at Garrett for comparison. The resemblance was undeniable. Garrett finally found his voice. "You kept them from me. For 4 years, you kept my children from me." "Did I?" Piper's calm cracked slightly, showing the anger beneath. "Let's be clear about what happened, Garrett. You left me because I was defective. Your words, multiple times. You told me you wanted nothing to do with adoption or any children that weren't your biological offspring. When I discovered I was pregnant, you were already engaged to Kendall, already telling everyone how you needed to move on with someone who could give you the family I couldn't. So yes, I made a choice. I chose to protect my children from a father who'd proven his love was entirely conditional. They're my children." Garrett's voice rose. "You had no right. I had every right." Piper's voice rose to match his. "You abandoned their mother. You made it crystal clear you wanted nothing to do with the possibility of children from our final IVF cycle. You left, Garrett. You chose your pride and your bloodline obsession over our marriage. I just followed through on the choice you already made." One of the boys, quieter than the others, stepped slightly forward. His voice was small but clear. "Mommy said you were very busy. That's why you couldn't visit us." The simple statement cracked something in Garrett's chest. This small boy with his eyes, offering innocent understanding for an absence that had nothing to do with being busy and everything to do with Garrett never knowing he existed. "I didn't know." The words came out hoarse. "I didn't know you existed, because you didn't ask." Piper's voice softened slightly. "You left and never looked back. You were so busy proving I was the problem that you never considered you might have gotten exactly what you said you wanted." The crowd was absolutely silent. Phones were everywhere, recording every moment. This would be all over social media within minutes. The Colorado business community would be buzzing with this story for months. Felix appeared at Garrett's shoulder, his face a mixture of shock and something that might have been satisfaction. "Tom, maybe we should take this somewhere private." But the third child, the other girl, spoke up before anyone could move. Her voice carried in the silent room. "We brought you a Christmas present. Do you want to see it?" The innocent question, delivered with such hopeful sweetness, made several guests tear up. Here was a child meeting her father for the first time, excited to give him a gift, unaware of the magnitude of drama unfolding around her. Garrett looked down at her, at this small person who was genetically his daughter but a complete stranger. Kendall grabbed his arm harder. "Garrett, we need to talk. Now. Privately." But Garrett couldn't look away from the children. Three small faces watching him with varying degrees of hope, curiosity, and uncertainty. His children, his legacy, everything he'd claimed to want so desperately, standing in front of him while he'd been married to someone else, building a life that excluded them entirely. The butler appeared, looking flustered. "Mr. Hayes, shall I? The children probably need. Would you like me to arrange something?" The nanny, who had been standing quietly in the background, spoke up. "The children should eat soon. It's past their normal dinner time." Piper nodded. "We'll go." This was overwhelming enough. "Children, say goodnight." Wait. The word escaped Garrett's mouth before he'd consciously decided to speak. "Please wait." Piper turned back, one hand on each girl's shoulder, the boy holding her dress. Her expression was guarded. "Yes, I need." Garrett's mind was chaos. He needed to process this, understand this, figure out if this was real or some elaborate manipulation. But looking at those three small faces, he already knew the truth. This is real. They're mine. Yes. Piper's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. "They're yours. Why now? Why come here tonight?" "Because you invited me here to humiliate me for being childless." Piper's calm mask slipped, showing the pain underneath. "You wanted to parade your perfect life in front of my failure. I thought it was time for the truth. These children deserve to know their father, and you deserve to face the reality that you got exactly what you said you wanted. You just weren't there to see it." Several guests nodded, their sympathy clearly shifting toward Piper. The cruel purpose behind Garrett's invitation was now exposed for everyone to see. Kendall made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "This is perfect. Just perfect." She turned to Garrett, her eyes blazing. "Your ex-wife shows up with 3 children, 3 heirs with claims to everything you own, and you're just going to accept it? Call your lawyer, Garrett. Demand paternity tests. This could be a scam. Look at them." Felix's voice was quiet but firm. "Anyone with eyes can see they're his." Victoria turned on Felix. "Stay out of this. This is about our family, our future." "What future?" Felix asked bluntly. "You've been lying about being pregnant. Garrett has 3 children with his ex-wife. What exactly are you fighting for here?" "How dare you?" Kendall's voice went shrill. The children were starting to look uncomfortable. The quieter boy moved closer to Piper, partially hiding behind her. One of the girls looked like she might cry. Piper knelt down, gathering her children close. "It's okay, babies. We're going to go now." "No." Garrett surprised himself with the word. "Please. Can we?" He looked around at the 200 guests, watching with rapt attention. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Piper studied his face, then nodded slowly. "Jade, can you take the children to get something to eat?" The nanny nodded. "Come on, sweethearts. Let's find you some dinner." As Jade led the children toward the kitchen, several female guests immediately mobilized, following to help. The maternal instinct to care for small children in an overwhelming situation overrode their curiosity about the adult drama. Garrett led Piper to his study, Kendall following uninvited. Felix trailed behind, closing the door firmly on the curious crowd. The 4 of them stood in the wood-paneled room, years of carefully constructed lies dissolving in the silence. Finally, Kendall spoke. Her voice was cold, controlled. "My lawyer will be in touch tomorrow. I'm filing for separation. Kendall, we need to discuss this rationally." Garrett began. "Rationally?" She laughed bitterly. "You have 3 children with your ex-wife. Children with claims to your estate, your company, your legacy. Children that threaten everything we've built. There's nothing to discuss. I'm protecting my interests. Your interests." Garrett's voice was flat. "Not our marriage, not our partnership. Your financial interests. Don't you dare judge me." Kendall's composure cracked. "I married you with the understanding that we'd have children together, that I would give you the family your first wife couldn't. Now I find out she gave you 3 children, and I'm supposed to what? Play stepmother to your secret love children? Help raise the heirs that push any future children of ours down the line of succession? I don't think so. They're 4 years old." Piper's voice cut through the argument. "They're not financial instruments or succession problems. They're children. Children you kept secret." Kendall turned on her. "Children you hid to trap Garrett later when it was financially advantageous. I haven't asked for a single dollar." Piper's voice was steel. "I've raised them completely alone. I didn't come here for money. I came here because they deserve to know their father, and he deserves to face the consequences of his choices. My choices? Garrett found his voice. You made the choice to hide them, after you made the choice to leave me for being infertile. Piper turned to face him directly. You destroyed our marriage, Garrett. You called me defective. You told everyone I'd failed you. When I found out I was pregnant, you were already engaged to her, already building your perfect new life. Was I supposed to call you up and force myself back into your world? Force my children to have a part-time father who'd already proven he only loved conditionally? I would have wanted to know. Would you? Piper's laugh was bitter. Really? While you were planning your wedding to Kendall, announcing to everyone that you finally found someone who could give you children, I was supposed to tell you that actually, I was pregnant with triplets. How do you think that would have gone? Garrett opened his mouth, then closed it. He tried to imagine receiving that news while engaged to Kendall. Would he have been happy? Or would he have felt trapped, obligated, resentful? The honest answer made him sick to his stomach. Felix spoke quietly. What matters now isn't who was right or wrong in the past. What matters is those 3 children who just met their father for the first time. What happens next? Garrett turned to the window, looking out at the darkness and falling snow. What happens next? He had 3 children. 3 small people who shared his DNA, the legacy he'd claimed to desperately want. And he felt completely unprepared, totally overwhelmed, utterly lost. I don't know, he admitted. Well, I know. Kendall's voice was decisive. I'm leaving tonight. I'll stay at my mother's in Denver. My lawyer will contact yours Monday morning. I want a clean separation, Garrett. Fast and generous. You have your heirs now. Let me go. She walked out without waiting for a response. Moments later they heard raised voices in the main room, then the sound of the front door opening and closing. Felix moved toward the door. I'll tell the remaining guests the party's over. You 2 need time to figure this out. After Felix left, Garrett and Piper stood in silence. Finally, Garrett spoke. How is this real? How did you carry triplets and give birth and raise them for 4 years without anyone telling me? I moved to Boulder, kept a low profile. My parents helped. Close friends helped. The children don't have a social media presence. I was careful, but someone must have known. Someone must have seen. People saw a single mother with triplets, not your triplets specifically, and the few people who might have connected the dots, they kept my secret because they understood why I needed it kept. Garrett turned to face her. Were you ever going to tell me? Yes. Piper's voice was quiet. I always knew someday I would. The children deserved to know their father, and honestly, I was getting tired of carrying the secret. When your invitation arrived, so obviously designed to humiliate me, it felt like the right time. You wanted to prove I'd failed. I wanted to show you the truth. Mission accomplished. Garrett's voice was hollow. Everyone saw. Everyone knows. By tomorrow, this will be all over Denver. The business community, social media, everything. Is that what you're worried about? Your reputation? Shouldn't I be? Garrett asked. I just found out I have 3 children I never knew about. My wife just left me. My perfect life just imploded in front of 200 witnesses. Yes, I'm worried about my reputation. I'm worried about the children. Piper's voice hardened. I'm worried about 3 4-year-olds who just met their father in the most overwhelming circumstances possible. I'm worried about how this trauma might affect them. Your reputation is not my priority. They're my children too. I should have a say in decisions about their welfare, then show up and earn that say. Piper moved toward the door. You've been absent their entire lives. You don't get to walk in now and start making demands. If you want to be their father, actually be their father. Show up. Be consistent. Put them first instead of your ego. She opened the door, then paused. We're staying at the Aspen Inn tonight. Tomorrow we're driving back to Boulder. If you want to see them again, call me. We'll arrange something appropriate. But Garrett, hear this clearly. I will protect my children from anything and anyone that threatens their emotional well-being, including you. So if you're going to participate in their lives, you better be ready to actually be a parent, not just collect heirs. She walked out, leaving Garrett alone in his study. He sank into his leather chair, head in his hands. Through the walls he could hear the sounds of his party dissolving, guests leaving, staff cleaning up, Felix's voice directing people toward the door. His perfect evening had become a catastrophe. His perfect life had been revealed as a facade. His perfect new marriage had ended before dessert was served. And somewhere in his kitchen, 3 small children who shared his DNA were probably eating chicken nuggets, unaware that their existence had just destroyed everything their father had built to prove he'd made the right choice in abandoning their mother. Garrett sat alone in the wreckage of his own creation and finally, for the first time in 5 years, let himself feel the full weight of what he'd done. Garrett Hayes sat alone in his study until 3 in the morning. The house was silent now. The caterers had cleaned everything and left. The guests had all gone home, undoubtedly texting and calling each other about the most dramatic party of the decade. Felix had checked on him twice, said nothing both times, just stood in the doorway looking concerned before leaving again. The ice sculptures had melted into puddles on the marble entryway. The perfect Christmas tree still glittered in the empty great room. The expensive decorations that were supposed to showcase his success now felt like props in a stage play that had ended badly. Garrett's phone had been buzzing nonstop for hours. Text messages, voicemails, emails. He ignored all of them. Instead, he sat in the darkness and forced himself to think about 3 small faces. Hazel eyes looking up at him with hope and uncertainty. A little girl asking if he wanted to see the present they brought. A little boy explaining that Mommy said Daddy was just busy. They thought he'd been busy, not absent, not uncaring, just busy. Piper had protected him in their narrative, given him an excuse that preserved their ability to love him. He didn't deserve that kindness. His phone rang again. This time he looked. It was his father, calling from the retirement community in Scottsdale. Garrett let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. The old man's voice was gruff, confused. "Garrett, people are sending me news articles about you having secret triplets with your ex-wife. What the hell is going on? Call me back." Garrett deleted the message. He couldn't talk to his father right now. Couldn't hear the lecture about Hayes' family legacy and bloodlines. Couldn't stomach the old man's probable satisfaction that Garrett had finally produced heirs regardless of the circumstances. At 4 in the morning, Garrett finally stood up. His body ached from sitting in the same position for so long. He walked through his mansion, seeing it with new eyes. The grand staircase that led to more bedrooms than he could ever use. The chef's kitchen where he never cooked. The home theater, the wine cellar, the gym with equipment he barely touched. The art collection he'd bought because his decorator said it showed sophistication. All of it was empty. Beautiful and expensive and completely empty. He ended up in the garage, staring at his collection of cars. A Tesla, a Range Rover, a vintage Porsche he drove maybe twice a year. Symbols of success that meant nothing. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. Garrett Hayes, prominent Colorado developer, discovered to have secret triplets with ex-wife at Christmas party. The article included photos that guests had posted on social media. Pictures of the children with their unmistakable resemblance to him. Pictures of Piper's calm dignity. Pictures of Kendall storming out. Pictures of Garrett's shocked face. The comment section was brutal. Gold digger ex-wife shows up with fake kids for money. Poor guy, ambushed at his own party. Team Piper all the way. He abandoned her, and she raised those babies alone. Garrett closed the browser. He didn't need strangers' opinions. He knew the truth. He'd orchestrated a party specifically to humiliate a woman who'd done nothing wrong except fail to get pregnant on his timeline. And she'd responded by introducing him to the children he'd claimed to desperately want but had been too proud and stubborn to deserve. The sky was starting to lighten when Garrett finally went to bed. He didn't sleep. He lay there thinking about Piper pregnant and alone. Piper going to doctor's appointments by herself. Piper in labor with triplets, terrified, without a partner to hold her hand. Piper bringing 3 infants home to an empty house. Piper getting up for middle-of-the-night feedings, changing diapers, soothing crying. Babies, doing everything alone because he'd called her defective and walked away. At 7 in the morning, his phone rang. It was Robert, his attorney. "Garrett, I've been getting calls since midnight. We need to talk about this situation, I know. First, Kendall's attorney has already sent preliminary separation papers. She's moving fast. Second, we need to discuss paternity testing and custody arrangements. Third, the board is concerned about the publicity. And fourth, are you okay?" The last question surprised Garrett. "No, I'm not okay." "Fair enough." Robert's voice was measured, professional. "Let's focus on what we can control. Do you want paternity testing?" Garrett thought about those 3 small faces. the exact replica of his own childhood photos. No, they're mine. Anyone with eyes can see it. For legal purposes, we should still do formal testing, just to have documentation. Are you planning to seek custody? Garrett sat up in bed. I don't know. I just found out they exist 12 hours ago. I have no idea what I'm planning. Well, figure it out soon because this is going to get complicated. Custody, child support, estate planning, everything changes now. And Garrett, the business implications are significant. The board is spooked. This kind of publicity, the personal drama, it affects investor confidence. The board can wait. For the first time in his career, Garrett said the words without hesitation. I have more important things to deal with right now. After hanging up, Garrett showered and dressed. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. When had he become this person? When had success become more important than integrity? When had he started measuring his worth by external markers instead of internal values? He knew the answer. It had been gradual, starting in his 20s when his father began grooming him to take over the family real estate business. Every conversation had been about legacy, expansion, dominance. His father had never asked if Garrett was happy, only if he was winning. And Garrett had internalized that message. He'd built an empire and called it success. He'd married a beautiful woman and called it happiness. He'd orchestrated a party to humiliate his ex-wife and called it closure. All of it had been performance. None of it had been real. At 9 o'clock, Garrett drove to the Aspen Inn. He had no plan, no prepared speech. He just knew he needed to see those children again. Needed to know this was real and not some strange dream. The woman at the front desk looked up as he entered. Her eyes widened in recognition. Mr. Hayes, can I help you? I'm looking for Piper Collins. She's staying here with her children. The desk clerk's expression turned cold. She made it clear she didn't want to be disturbed. Please, just tell her I'm here. If she doesn't want to see me, I'll leave. The clerk made a call, spoke quietly, then hung up. She says you can meet in the breakfast room. She and the children are finishing their meal. Garrett walked into the small breakfast area and saw them immediately. Piper sat at a corner table with 3 small children who were working their way through pancakes and fruit. They were chattering, laughing, completely at ease. A normal family having a normal breakfast. Piper looked up as he approached. Her expression was guarded but not hostile. She said something to the children, who all turned to look at him. Good morning. Garrett's voice came out uncertain. The boldest girl, Hadley he remembered, waved. Hi. Are you here to have breakfast with us? If that's okay with your mother. Piper studied him for a long moment. You can sit. We're almost done. Garrett pulled up a chair. Up close, in morning light, the resemblance was even more striking. All 3 children had inherited different combinations of his and Piper's features, but the Hayes genes were dominant. The eyes, the dimples, the shape of their faces. Did you sleep okay? He asked, then felt stupid. Of course they hadn't slept okay. They'd just been through a traumatic experience. We slept great. Hadley was clearly the spokesperson. The hotel has a pool, but Mommy said it was too late last night. Can we swim this morning? We're driving back to Boulder this morning. Piper's tone was firm. You have preschool tomorrow. I don't want to go to preschool. I want to swim. Hadley's face scrunched up in preparation for an argument. Hadley rose. That's not how we talk. Piper's voice was gentle but left no room for negotiation. We're leaving at 10 o'clock. You can choose your car activity, book, or music, but we're not swimming today. Garrett watched the interaction with fascination. This was parenting. Real, everyday parenting. Not the abstract concept he'd fantasized about, but the actual work of setting boundaries. Managing disappointment, guiding small humans through their feelings. The quieter boy, Sutton, was watching Garrett with solemn eyes. Are you going to live with us now? The question created silence at the table. Piper set down her coffee cup. The other 2 children stopped eating, waiting for the answer. No, buddy. Garrett's voice was soft. I'm not going to live with you. Your mom and I aren't married anymore, but I would like to spend time with you, to get to know you, if that's okay. Okay. Sutton returned to his pancakes, apparently satisfied with that answer. The 3rd child, Declan, spoke up. His voice was analytical, precise. Do we call you Dad or Garrett or Mr. Hayes? What would you like to call me? Hadley jumped in. Dad, because that's what you are. The word hit Garrett harder than he expected. Dad. He'd wanted that title for so long, had blamed Piper for denying it to him. Now it was being offered by a 4-year-old who didn't know she had the power to destroy him with that single syllable. Dad is good. His voice was rough. I'd like that. After breakfast, Piper walked Garrett outside while Jade supervised the children packing their things. They stood in the hotel parking lot, awkward and uncertain. I don't know how to do this, Garrett admitted. I don't know how to be a father. Neither did I when they were born. Piper's voice was matter of fact. You learn. You show up. You put them first. You make 1,000 mistakes and apologize and try to do better. Will you let me? Will you let me try? Piper was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I brought them to your party because they deserve to know their father. But Garrett, I meant what I said last night. I will protect them from anything that threatens their emotional well-being. If you're going to do this, you have to actually do it. Not halfway, not when it's convenient. You have to show up consistently, reliably, selflessly. I understand. Do you? Because showing up for children is nothing like showing up for business meetings. They don't care about your schedule or your priorities. They need you when they need you, not when you can fit them in. I'll make the time. And you can't just throw money at them. Piper's voice was fierce. I don't want your money, Garrett. I never did. I want them to have a father who actually parents them, who knows their favorite foods and their fears and their dreams, who shows up to preschool events and doctor's appointments, who does the boring, hard, everyday work of being a dad. That's what I want too. Garrett met her eyes. I know you don't believe me. I know I have to prove it. But Piper, looking at them, seeing them, I finally understand what I've been missing. Not heirs or legacy or bloodline. Actual children. Small people who need love and guidance and presence. I want to be that for them. I just need you to teach me how. Piper's expression softened slightly. We'll start small. Video calls twice a week. Then, maybe a visit in Boulder. We'll build from there. Thank you. Garrett's voice broke. Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. I'm not giving you a chance for you. I'm giving you a chance for them. They deserve a father. Don't make me regret this. She walked back inside, leaving Garrett standing in the parking lot as snow began to fall again. By the time Garrett drove back to his mansion, the story had exploded across Colorado media. Local news stations were running segments. Social media was in a frenzy. His phone had over 200 messages. He ignored most of them. But he couldn't ignore the one from his board of directors requesting an emergency meeting. Monday morning, Garrett sat in the conference room at Hayes Property Group headquarters in downtown Denver. The 12 board members looked at him with varying expressions of concern, disapproval, and in Felix's case, sympathy. Walter Green, the oldest board member and most influential voice, spoke first. Garrett, we've called this meeting to discuss the events of this weekend and their impact on the company. I understand. Garrett's voice was steady. I'm prepared to address any concerns. The concerns are significant. Walter leaned forward. Our stock price dropped 15% in pre-market trading this morning. Several major investors have called asking about leadership stability. This personal situation is affecting business confidence. I take full responsibility for the situation. This isn't about responsibility. Another board member, Catherine Liu, spoke up. It's about judgment. You invited your ex-wife to a party specifically to humiliate her. That shows a level of cruelty that makes us question your character. And the fact that you have 3 children you knew nothing about raises serious questions about your personal life management. I didn't know about the children. Garrett kept his voice level. That's the truth. But yes, my treatment of my ex-wife was cruel and wrong. I'm not proud of my actions. The question is, what happens now? Walter steepled his fingers. We need to stabilize investor confidence. We need to assure our partners that Hayes Property Group is on solid footing. What are you proposing? A temporary leave of absence. Walter's words landed like stones. 3 months. Let Felix run operations as acting CEO. Use the time to resolve your personal situation quietly. When you return, this story will have died down. You're pushing me out. Garrett said it flatly. We're giving you time to handle a crisis. Catherine's voice was measured. You have 3 children who need their father. You have a divorce to finalize with Kendall. You have custody arrangements to establish. Trying to do all that while running a company isn't feasible. Take the time. Come back when things are settled. Garrett looked around the table. Felix met his eyes and gave a small nod. This was the right move, and they both knew it. All right, 3 months, but I want it on record that I'm stepping aside voluntarily to prioritize my children. Of course. Walter relaxed slightly. We'll issue a statement this afternoon. Thank you for being reasonable, Garrett. After the meeting, Felix walked Garrett to his office. How are you really doing? Honestly, I feel like my entire life was built on sand and the tide just came in. Garrett sank into his desk chair. Everything I thought mattered doesn't. Everything I ignored turns out to be essential. I have 3 children, Felix. 3 small people who look at me like I have answers, and I don't even know the questions. So you'll learn. Felix sat across from him. You're not stupid, Garrett. You're just emotionally stunted. That's fixable, is it? I'm 39 years old. I've spent 2 decades building a company in 0 time building character. How do I fix that? Therapy. Felix said it like it was obvious. Lots of therapy. And actually showing up for those kids. Children are remarkably forgiving if you're genuine. Piper said I have to earn it. She's right. You do. Felix's voice was firm. You treated her terribly, Garrett. You made her feel worthless for something that wasn't her fault. Then you paraded your new life in front of her like a trophy. She would be completely justified in never letting you near those children. The fact that she's giving you a chance is more grace than you deserve. I know. Garrett put his head in his hands. I know all of that. I just don't know how to be the person they need me to be. Start by being honest. Stop performing. Stop trying to control everything. Just show up and be real. That night, Garrett had his first scheduled video call with the children. He sat in his home office at 7 o'clock, his laptop open, more nervous than he'd been for any business presentation. Piper's face appeared on screen first. They're excited to talk to you. Remember, keep it light. Ask about their day. Don't make promises you can't keep. Then 3 small faces crowded into frame, all talking at once. Hi, Dad. We had art class today. I made you a picture. Hadley's voice dominated. I built a really tall tower. Declan held up a picture he'd drawn. See? This is my tower. Sutton waved shyly, then held up a stuffed dinosaur. This is Rex. He wanted to meet you. Garrett felt his throat tighten. Hi, guys. Tell me about your day. For the next 30 minutes, they chattered about preschool, their friends, the snack they'd had, a game they played. Garrett mostly listened, asking occasional questions, learning the rhythm of their speech patterns, the things that excited them, the way they interrupted each other and finished each other's sentences. When it was time to say goodnight, Hadley asked, When can we see you for real? Not just on the computer? Soon. Garrett looked at Piper, who nodded. How about next weekend? I could come to Boulder and we could spend Saturday together. 3 enthusiastic yes responses. After the children logged off, Piper stayed on the line. That was good. You let them lead. That's important. I felt completely out of my depth. That's normal. You'll get better. Piper paused. Garrett, I meant to tell you. My lawyer contacted yours about formalizing arrangements. I'm not trying to keep you from them. I just want everything clear and legal. I understand. And Piper, I'm going to set up child support payments, backdated to their birth. I know you said you don't want money, but they're entitled to it. And so are you. We can discuss that through the lawyers. There's one more thing. Garrett took a breath. I'm taking a leave of absence from my company. 3 months. I want to focus on learning how to be their father, on doing this right. Piper's expression shifted, something like surprise crossing her face. That's a big decision. They're more important than business. It took me almost 40 years to figure that out, but I finally got there. After they hung up, Garrett sat in his home office for a long time. Then he opened his laptop and searched for therapists in the Denver area who specialized in helping adults process childhood trauma and develop emotional intelligence. He scheduled an appointment for the following week with Dr. Alan Bennett, who came highly recommended. At their first session, Dr. Bennett got right to the point. Tell me why you're here, Garrett. I discovered I have 3 children I didn't know about. My second marriage is ending. My company has pushed me aside temporarily. I moved out of my mansion into a smaller place in Boulder, and I feel like I'm meeting myself for the first time and not liking what I see. That's quite a list. Dr. Bennett made notes. Let's start with the children. How do you feel about them? Terrified, awed, guilty. Grateful. I don't know how to be a father. My own father was cold and distant. He taught me that a man's worth is measured by his achievements, not his relationships. I became exactly what he raised me to be, and now I realize it made me hollow. You're here, which means you want to change. I have to change. Those children deserve better than who I've been. What about you? Do you deserve better? Garrett looked up, surprised by the question. I don't know. That's what we're going to work on. Dr. Bennett set down his pen. You can't be a good father if you don't believe you deserve goodness yourself. Self-worth isn't selfish. It's essential. Over the following weeks, Garrett began the slow process of rebuilding himself from the inside out. He went to therapy twice a week. He had video calls with the children every Tuesday and Thursday, and that first Saturday, he drove to Boulder with sweaty palms and a racing heart. Piper's house was a modest craftsman on a tree-lined street, nothing like the mansion he'd left, but when she opened the door and 3 children shouted "Dad" and ran to hug him, it felt more like home than anywhere he'd ever lived. They spent the day at a local park. Garrett pushed swings. He caught children coming down slides. He helped build snowmen. He listened to endless chatter about preschool drama and favorite snacks and the complicated social hierarchy of 4-year-olds. He made mistakes. He got frustrated when Declan had a meltdown over the wrong color juice box. He checked his phone during Hadley's long explanation of a game she'd invented. He struggled with Sutton's shyness, not knowing how to draw him out, but Piper was patient, gently correcting, modeling, teaching. "This is what parenting looks like," she said when Hadley's tantrum spiraled into tears. "You stay calm. You set boundaries. You validate feelings while redirecting behavior. I'm terrible at this. You're learning. Everyone is terrible at first." By the end of the day, Garrett was exhausted in a way business never made him. But it was a good exhaustion. Real exhaustion. The kind that came from actually doing something that mattered. When he said goodbye, all 3 children hugged him. Sutton whispered, "Will you come back?" "Yes, I'll come back next Saturday, and we'll talk on Tuesday and Thursday. I promise." And unlike his promises in business, which were calculated and strategic, this promise felt sacred. These children were trusting him. He couldn't violate that trust. Meanwhile, Kendall's divorce proceeded swiftly. She wanted out, wanted her settlement, wanted nothing to do with Garrett or his surprise children. The prenuptial agreement was solid, but Garrett's lawyer negotiated a generous settlement anyway. "She gave you 18 months and a public humiliation," Robert argued. "You don't owe her millions. Just give her what she wants." Garrett was done fighting. "I'm not going to nickel and dime my way through another divorce. Let her have the money, and let's move on." The divorce was finalized in March, exactly 3 months after the Christmas party. Garrett felt nothing except relief. His relationship with the children grew slowly. Weekly visits became twice weekly. Video calls expanded to bedtime stories read over the computer. He learned their rhythms, their preferences, their distinct personalities. Hadley was bold and curious, constantly testing boundaries. She reminded him of himself at that age, confident to the point of recklessness. But she also had Piper's kindness, always noticing when someone felt left out. Declan was analytical and precise, needing logical explanations for everything. He built elaborate structures and got frustrated when they didn't match his vision. Garrett recognized the perfectionism, the high standards, the fear of failure. Sutton was gentle and observant, often content to watch rather than participate. He felt things deeply, cried easily, needed extra reassurance. He was the one who asked the hard questions. "Do you wish we'd never been born? Did you not want us?" And Garrett had to answer honestly, kneeling down to look Sutton in the eyes. "I didn't know about you, buddy, but now that I do, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I wish I'd been there. From the beginning. I wish I'd met you the day you were born, but I can't change the past. I can only show up now and love you the best way I know how." In April, Piper agreed to let Garrett have his first overnight visit. He'd moved to a 3-bedroom apartment in Boulder, 15 minutes from Piper's house. The place was modest by his standards, but filled with things the children had helped pick out. Superhero sheets for Declan, a purple comforter for Hadley, dinosaur everything for Sutton. The first overnight was chaos. Dinner took twice as long as planned because everyone had different opinions. Bath time resulted in water everywhere. Bedtime stretched to 2 hours of stories, water requests, bathroom trips, and requests for reassurance. When Sutton woke up crying at 2 in the morning, disoriented and wanting his mom, Garrett held him, rocked him, sang off-key lullabies until Sutton fell back asleep on his shoulder. Garrett sat in the darkness, holding his sleeping son, and felt something click into place. This was love. Not the abstract concept he'd chased, not the legacy he'd obsessed over, just this, holding a small person who trusted him enough to fall asleep in his arms. The next morning, when he returned the exhausted but happy children to Piper, she smiled. How was it? Hard, wonderful, terrifying. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to keep doing it. That's all that matters. Their co-parenting relationship evolved into genuine friendship. They had coffee while the children were in school, coordinating schedules and discussing parenting strategies. Garrett found himself asking Piper's advice on everything, from business, decisions to what he should do about his empty social calendar. "Why do you care what I think?" Piper asked one morning at their usual cafe. "Because you see things clearly. You always did. I just wasn't listening." One afternoon in May, Garrett picked up the children from preschool for their regular Wednesday afternoon visit. As they walked to his car, Hadley grabbed his hand. "Dad, why don't you and Mommy live together? All my friends' parents live in the same house." Garrett knelt down to her level, the other two children gathering close. "Your mom and I were married a long time ago, but we're not married anymore. Sometimes grown-ups are better as friends than as husband and wife. But you like each other, right?" Declan's analytical mind was working through the logic. "You smile when you see her. She asks your opinion. Friends live together sometimes. We do like each other." Garrett chose his words carefully. "We're a family, just a different kind than some families. What matters is that we both love you very much. Could you be married again?" Hadley asked with 4-year-old directness. The question caught Garrett off guard. "I don't know, sweetheart. That would be pretty complicated." "Why?" Sutton's quiet voice joined in. "You said you made a mistake leaving Mommy. Can't you unmake the mistake? Out of the mouths of babes, as they say." The question was simple, logical. If Garrett regretted leaving Piper, if they got along well now, if they were raising children together anyway, why not reconstruct what they'd broken? The answer was complicated. Hurt, pride, fear, the weight of everything that had happened. The knowledge that you couldn't just erase 5 years of pain and start over, but part of him wondered. A small, growing part that noticed how Piper smiled when he walked in, how she asked his opinion like it mattered, how they'd built something functional and respectful from the ashes of their failed marriage. That evening, after returning the children to Piper's house, Garrett lingered at the door. "They asked why we don't live together." Piper nodded. "I figured that question was coming." "What did you tell them? That we're better as friends? That families come in different forms?" "Good answer." Piper leaned against the doorframe. "Did they accept it?" "Not really. Hadley thinks we should get remarried. Sutton thinks I should unmake my mistake." Piper laughed, but it was tinged with something Garrett couldn't quite identify. Children see things in black and white. They don't understand all the complicated adult stuff. What if it's not that complicated? Garrett heard himself say the words before he'd fully thought them through. Piper's smile faded. "Garrett, I'm not proposing. I'm just thinking out loud. We get along now. We're raising children together anyway. We have mutual respect. We've both changed. Sometimes I wonder what it would look like if we tried to build something new, instead of just parallel parenting. We hurt each other." Piper's voice was quiet. "Badly. You made me feel worthless. I kept your children from you. That's not a foundation to build on. What if it is? What if the foundation is knowing exactly how badly we can hurt each other and choosing not to? What if it's having already seen each other at our worst and still deciding the other person is worth it?" Piper was quiet for a long time. "I need to think about this. And you need to be sure you're not just romanticizing co-parenting convenience into something it's not." "Fair." Garrett stepped back. "But Piper, I need you to know something. I've spent the last 6 months learning who I really am underneath all the performance, and the person I'm discovering, the real me, is better when I'm around you. Not because you complete me or any of that nonsense, but because you make me want to be the best version of myself. You always did." He left before she could respond, before he could say anything else that might complicate things further. But the seed had been planted, and over the following weeks, something shifted between them. Not dramatic, not sudden, just small moments that felt like more than friendship. The way Piper's hand lingered on his arm when she thanked him for handling Declan's meltdowns so well. The way Garrett found himself thinking about her at odd moments. The way they both laughed at the same time during a children's movie, caught each other's eyes, and held the gaze a beat too long. In June, Garrett returned to work, but not as CEO. He'd negotiated a new arrangement with the board. Felix would remain as CEO. Garrett would serve as Chief Strategy Officer, focusing on long-term planning with flexible hours and remote work options. The board had been skeptical at first, but the company had actually thrived under Felix's leadership. Stock prices had recovered, investor confidence was solid, and Garrett's willingness to step aside permanently from the top role showed a level of self-awareness that ultimately strengthened confidence in the company's leadership. "I built this company," Garrett told Walter Green during the negotiation meeting, "but I'm not going to sacrifice my children for it. Felix is a better CEO than I was. I'm a better strategist than manager. This arrangement serves everyone. Your children have changed you," Walter observed. "They saved me," Garrett corrected. "I was successful and miserable. Now I'm less successful and actually happy. I'll take that trade every time." Garrett also restructured his company's focus. Instead of luxury developments that maximize profit, he began championing mixed-income housing projects that addressed Denver's affordability crisis. It was less profitable, but more meaningful. Felix supported the shift. "This is better for our long-term reputation anyway. We're not just developers anymore. We're community builders." In July, Garrett took the children on their first vacation together. A week in a cabin near Rocky Mountain National Park. Just him and 3 4-year-olds. No nanny, no Piper, just Dad figuring it out. It was hard. Hadley got altitude sickness the second day. Declan had a meltdown over the lack of Wi-Fi. Sutton was terrified of the unfamiliar nighttime sounds, but they hiked together, built campfires together, saw elk and marmots, and learned about ecosystems. Hadley collected rocks for her growing collection. Declan built elaborate fairy houses from forest materials. Sutton named every chipmunk they encountered. On the last night, they sat around the campfire roasting marshmallows. The sky was impossibly clear, stars scattered like diamonds. "Dad, do you like being our dad now?" Sutton asked, his face sticky with marshmallow. "Being your dad is the best thing I've ever done." Garrett meant it completely. "Better than being rich?" Hadley challenged. "So much better. Money just sits there. You guys make me laugh and think and want to be better. There's no comparison." "I'm glad we found you." Declan said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. "I'm glad you found me too, buddy, even though I should have been there all along." "I'm sorry I wasn't." "It's okay. We have you now." Sutton leaned against Garrett's shoulder. "That's what matters." When Garrett returned the children to Piper, she took one look at his exhausted, happy face and laughed. "How was it?" "Best week of my life. Also, the hardest." "How do you do this every day?" "Practice." Piper smiled. "And coffee. Lots of coffee. Come in. I want to hear about the trip." They sat in her kitchen while the children showed their mother everything they'd collected, talking over each other in their excitement. Garrett watched Piper with her children and saw what he'd been too blind to see before. This was strength. This was success. Not the performance version he'd chased, but the real, messy, beautiful version. After the children were in bed, Piper and Garrett sat on her back porch with glasses of wine. "They really love you," Piper said quietly. "They talk about you constantly. I love them so much, it terrifies me." Garrett admitted, "Every time I think about the 4 years I missed, it physically hurts. You can't get those years back, but you can be present for every year going forward." "That's what I'm trying to do." Garrett turned to look at her. "With your permission, I'd like to have them more. Maybe split time more evenly. I know you're their primary parent, and I'm not trying to take them from you, but I want to be fully involved, not just peripheral. I think that would be good for them." Piper nodded. "We can work out a new schedule." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set. Finally, Garrett spoke again. "Do you ever think about what I said? About us?" Piper was quiet for a long time. "All the time. But Garrett, I'm scared. We failed at marriage once. Spectacularly. What makes you think we wouldn't fail again? We're different people now. I'm not the arrogant jerk who measured worth by achievements. You're not trying to be what someone else needs. We've both done the work to become whole on our own. That doesn't guarantee anything. Nothing does. But Piper, What we have now, this friendship, this respect, this partnership in raising incredible children, isn't that a better foundation than what we had before? Before, we had passion and hope. Now we have knowledge and choice. Piper turned to face him. If we tried this, really tried, and it didn't work, it would devastate the children. And if we don't try, we might miss the chance at something real. Something better than what we had before because it's built on truth instead of fantasy. I need time. Piper's voice was soft. I need to know this isn't just guilt or convenience or nostalgia. I need to know you see me, the real me, not just the mother of your children. I see you. Garrett reached for her hand tentatively. She didn't pull away. I see a woman who was strong enough to raise 3 children alone, who built a meaningful career while changing diapers, who protected her children's hearts even when it cost her, who gave me a second chance I absolutely didn't deserve. I see you, Piper, and I'm in awe of you. Piper's eyes filled with tears. You really have changed. I had to. The alternative was becoming my father. Cold, distant, measuring worth by bank accounts. The children gave me a reason to do the hard work of becoming someone better. They sat holding hands on the porch as the stars came out, 2 people who had hurt each other learning how to heal together. Summer turned to fall. Garrett and Piper continued their careful dance around something that felt more than friendship but wasn't quite romance. The children picked up on it, commenting on how their parents looked at each other, asking increasingly pointed questions about whether grown-ups who were friends could also be more than friends. In October, exactly 1 year after that fateful Christmas party invitation arrived, Piper made a decision. She called Garrett. Can you come over tonight after the kids are asleep? Just you. We need to talk. Garrett's stomach dropped. This was it. Either she was ready to try, or she was going to firmly establish that friendship was all they could ever be. He arrived at 9 after the children were asleep. Piper had wine poured, candles lit, nervousness written all over her face. They sat on her couch, the worn, comfortable one where he'd read bedtime stories dozens of times. I've been thinking, Piper started, her hands wrapped around her wine glass, about what you said, about trying. Garrett's heart rate increased, but he stayed quiet, letting her talk. I talked to my therapist about it, about us, about whether it's wise or foolish to even consider this. And she said the question isn't whether we can avoid hurting each other. We're human. We'll hurt each other sometimes. The question is whether we've both learned how to repair, to forgive, to choose each other even when it's hard. I have learned that, or I'm learning. It's a process. I know. I've watched you with the children. I've seen you choose their needs over your ego 100 times. I've seen you apologize when you're wrong. I've seen you show up even when it's inconvenient. You're not the man I divorced. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Piper set down her wine glass. The man I divorced would never have taken a leave of absence from work, would never have prioritized children's feelings over business opportunities, would never have admitted he needed help. And you think that makes trying again less risky? I think it makes trying again possible. Piper turned to face him fully. But Garrett, I need you to understand something. If we do this, we're not getting back together. We're not recreating what we had. We're building something completely new. I don't want what we had. I want something real, something built on who we actually are, not who we thought we should be. Then yes, Piper's voice was steady despite her obvious nervousness. Let's try. Slowly. We date like we're meeting for the first time. We don't tell the children anything until we're sure. We protect them first, always, always. Garrett agreed. So what does dating look like for 2 people who already have 3 kids together? I have no idea. Piper laughed. But I think we figure it out as we go. Their first real date was dinner at a restaurant in Denver, away from Boulder where everyone knew them. It felt strange and wonderful and terrifying. They talked for 3 hours, getting to know each other, not as the people they'd been, but as who they'd become. Garrett learned that Piper had published a book on environmental law that was being used in law schools. She'd built a consulting practice that let her work from home while the children were young. She'd created a life of meaning and purpose. Piper learned that Garrett had been in therapy for 8 months, working through childhood issues and his father's toxic influence. He'd restructured his entire company and his definition of success. He'd become someone who measured his days by meaningful moments instead of profitable deals. Can I ask you something? Piper said over dessert. When did you know? When did you realize you wanted more than co-parenting? Garrett thought back. Honestly, that day at the park when Sutton fell and scraped his knee, you were at a meeting, so it was just me. He was crying, bleeding a little, scared, and I held him and cleaned him up and told him he was brave. Then he looked at me with complete trust and said, "You always make things better, Dad." In that moment, I realized I wanted to make everything better, not just for him, but for all of you. I wanted to be the person you all came to when things were hard, not just as a dad, but as a partner to you. That's when I knew too. Piper's eyes were soft. I saw how you handled it. You didn't panic or call me. You just dealt with it. And when I got home, Sutton told me the whole story like it was an adventure. You'd turned a scary moment into a bonding experience. I realized you'd become the father I always hoped you could be, and I wondered if you might also be the partner I'd needed all along. They dated for 3 months before telling the children. 3 months of stolen dinners and long conversations and learning how to be together without an audience. 3 months of discovering that they genuinely liked each other now in ways they never had before. When they finally sat the children down in December, 1 year after the Christmas party that changed everything, 3 small faces watched them with suspicious hope. "Kids, we want to talk to you about something," Piper started gently. "You're getting married again," Hadley announced confidently. "We're not getting married," Garrett corrected, "but we are dating. Do you know what that means?" "It means you like each other as more than friends," Declan said with his usual precision. "That's right. We wanted to tell you because it might mean some changes. We might spend more time together as a whole family." "Does that mean Dad will live here?" Sutton's eyes were huge. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." Piper was careful. "We're taking things slowly. What matters is that we all love each other, and we're figuring out what that looks like for our family." "I think it's good," Hadley declared. "I like it when we're all together. It feels right." The other two nodded agreement. That easily, that simply, the children accepted what the adults had spent months agonizing over, because to them, it was simple. The people they loved were choosing to love each other. Of course, that was good. Christmas arrived again, 1 year after the catastrophic party. This time, Piper invited Garrett to celebrate at her house. No guests, no performance, just the 5 of them. They decorated the tree together with handmade ornaments the children had created in preschool. They made cookies that were slightly burned. They watched Christmas movies while drinking hot chocolate. They read the Nativity story and talked about what the season meant. On Christmas morning, the children woke up early and ran to see what Santa had brought. Garrett had learned the art of thoughtful gifts rather than expensive ones. For Hadley, a rock tumbler and a book about geology. For Declan, a complex engineering set. For Sutton, stuffed animals representing endangered species and a book about conservation. The children squealed with delight, immediately diving into their gifts. Garrett watched them with a fullness in his chest he'd never experienced in his years of luxury and performance. "This is perfect," he said to Piper quietly. She smiled. "It's real. That's better than perfect. I have something for you." Garrett handed her a small wrapped box. Piper opened it to find a simple silver necklace with a small pendant. 3 intertwined circles. "The circles represent our children," Garrett explained. "They're connected but distinct, just like our family. We're all linked together in this messy, beautiful, imperfect thing." Piper's eyes filled with tears. "It's beautiful. Thank you." After the children were occupied with their new toys, Garrett and Piper stood together in her kitchen making breakfast. The domesticity of it, the ordinary magic of scrambling eggs and pouring juice, while children played nearby, felt more precious than anything Garrett had accumulated in his mansion. "A year ago, I was planning to humiliate you at a party," Garrett said quietly. "I thought showcasing my success would prove I'd made the right choice. Instead, you showed me 3 children who destroyed my ego and rebuilt my soul." "No regrets?" Piper asked. "Only the years I missed. But Piper, if those years had to be lost for me to become someone who deserves them, then maybe it happened exactly the way it needed to. I used to be so angry at you," Piper admitted. "For leaving, for calling me defective, for building a new life while I struggled alone. But somewhere along the way, the anger transformed into something else. Gratitude, maybe, because you leaving forced me to become strong in ways I never would have otherwise. So we're both grateful for the worst thing that happened to us? Maybe that's what redemption looks like, taking the broken pieces and building something better than what we had before." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their children play, building something new from the wreckage of their past. If you're still watching this story, if you've stayed with Garrett and Piper and their children through this journey, I need you to hear something. This story isn't just about them. It's about all of us. Every person who has made choices they regret. Every person who has measured their worth by the wrong standards. Every person who has hurt someone they loved and wondered if redemption is possible. Garrett's transformation didn't happen because of one dramatic moment. It happened because of 1,000 small choices. To show up, to apologize, to put children's needs before his ego, to do the boring hard work of therapy, to redefine success, to choose meaning over money. Piper's forgiveness didn't come easily or quickly. It came because she did her own work, her own healing, her own growth. She didn't forgive because she was weak. She forgave because she was strong enough to recognize that holding on to pain hurt her more than letting it go. The lesson here isn't that you should give second chances to everyone who hurts you. Some relationships are meant to end and stay ended. The lesson is that people can change if they're willing to do the work. That redemption is possible but never free. That love built on truth is stronger than love built on fantasy. So let me ask you directly, where in your life are you performing instead of being real? What are you chasing that won't actually fulfill you? Who do you need to apologize to? What part of yourself needs to transform? If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that broken things can become beautiful, I need you to do something. Hit that like button right now, not just to help the algorithm, though that matters, but to mark this moment, to acknowledge that this story touched something in you. Subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips, because every week I bring you stories like this. Stories that entertain, but also transform. Stories that remind us who we can become when we're willing to do the hard work. And most importantly, share this video. Share it with someone who thinks they've made mistakes they can't come back from. Share it with someone chasing empty success. Share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to become who you should have been. Drop a comment telling me what this story made you feel, think, or realize. Tell me about your own journey, your own transformation, your own moment when everything changed. I read every comment. This isn't just content. This is conversation. This is community. Because here's the truth that Garrett learned the hard way. Legacy isn't what you leave behind when you die. It's how you show up every day while you're alive. It's not your bank account or your job title or your Instagram following. It's whether the people who know you best can see your love through your actions. Garrett Hayes lost a mansion and gained a home, lost a trophy wife and found a real partner, lost empty success and found meaningful purpose. He stopped being the man his father raised him to be and became the man his children needed him to be. And in doing that, he became the man he needed to be all along. 3 years after that catastrophic Christmas party, Garrett and Piper sat on her back porch again. The children, now 7 years old, were inside finishing homework. The evening was warm, summer stretching into twilight. "They've been asking again," Piper said, a smile playing at her lips. "About marriage? About why we're still just dating? Hadley thinks 3 years is long enough to make up our minds." Garrett laughed. "She's not wrong. So, what do we tell them? We tell them the truth. We're in no rush. We're building something real, and real things can't be rushed. Is that really why? Or are we both still scared?" Garrett considered the question honestly. "Maybe both. I'm not scared of commitment to you. I'm scared of messing it up, of falling back into old patterns, of disappointing them again." "You won't." Piper reached for his hand. "You're not that man anymore. Neither are you that woman. You don't need my validation or anyone else's to know your worth. We're both still works in progress. That's the point. We'll always be works in progress. But now we're progressing together instead of apart." Inside, Hadley called out, "Dad, I need help with my math homework." Garrett stood. "That's my cue. The homework wrangler has been summoned." As he walked inside, Piper watched him go. This man who had left her for being defective, who had orchestrated a party to humiliate her, who had missed the first 4 years of his children's lives. This man had transformed into someone who helped with homework and attended parent-teacher conferences and knew the names of all their children's friends. People could change. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely. That Christmas, their 4th together as a family, Garrett finally asked the question he'd been holding. They were alone in Piper's kitchen on Christmas morning, the children still asleep, coffee brewing, the house quiet and peaceful. "Piper, I know we said we weren't rushing, that we were building something real and real things take time. But I need to ask you something." Piper looked up from where she was preparing ingredients for Christmas breakfast. "Okay, will you marry me?" Again, differently. Not because society says we should, or because it makes schizo parenting easier, or because the children want it, but because I love you, the real you, the strong, brilliant, kind woman you are, because I want to spend the rest of my life partnering with you, because you make me better, and I hope I make you better too. Piper was quiet for a long moment. Then, yes. On one condition. Anything. We don't do it for anyone else, not for the children, though they'll be happy, not for appearances, not to complete some fairy tale. We do it because we're choosing each other, fully knowing each other, with all our flaws and histories and baggage. That's exactly why I'm asking. Then yes. Absolutely yes, they told the children at breakfast. 3 7-year-olds cheered so loud the neighbors probably heard. Hadley immediately began planning the wedding. Declan wanted to know the exact date so he could count down. Sutton just hugged both his parents and said, finally, the wedding, when it happened in spring, was nothing like their first one. No magazine coverage, no designer everything. Just family and close friends in Piper's backyard. The children participated in the ceremony, reading poems they'd written about family. Garrett's vows were simple and honest. "Piper, I failed you once. I measured you by the wrong standards and lost something irreplaceable. You gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. And in doing that, you gave me the opportunity to become someone worth that chance. I promise to choose you every day, to do the hard work of partnership, to measure my success by whether our family is healthy and happy, not by any external standard. I love you for exactly who you are." Piper's vows matched. "Garrett, you taught me that people can change, that redemption is possible, that our worst moments don't define us if we're willing to grow from them. You've shown our children what it means to admit mistakes and make amends. You've become the father they deserve and the partner I needed. I choose you, knowing exactly who you are and who you're becoming. I love you." Felix, standing as Garrett's best man, said afterward, "You know, 5 years ago if someone told me you'd be here, I wouldn't have believed it. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed it either." Garrett watched Piper dance with their children. "I thought I knew what I wanted. I was so wrong. Being wrong was the best thing that happened to you." "No," Garrett corrected. "Those 3 children were the best thing that happened to me. Being wrong about everything else just gave me the opportunity to appreciate them." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Garrett stood with Piper watching their children play. Hadley was organizing an elaborate game. Declan was explaining the rules with excessive detail. Sutton was making sure everyone felt included. "They're amazing," Garrett said, not for the first time. "They are, and they're half you. The best parts are all you. The best parts are all of us together." Piper leaned against his shoulder. "That's what family means." Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Garrett and Piper sat on their back porch. Stars scattered across the Colorado sky. The air smelled like pine and possibility. "Do you remember the Christmas party?" Garrett asked. "The one that started all this? I remember walking through your door with 3 terrified children. I remember your face when you saw them. I remember destroying your perfect evening. You saved my life that night. I just didn't know it yet. We saved each other," Piper corrected. "I needed to stop carrying that secret. You needed to face the truth. The children needed their father. Everyone got what they needed, just not the way anyone expected. Do you think we'll make it this time? Really make it?" Piper considered the question. "I think we'll choose to make it. Every day. Some days will be easy. Some will be hard. But we're not the people we were. We're better. Not perfect, but better. Better is enough. Better is everything." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars wheeled overhead. 2 people who had broken each other and rebuilt together, creating something stronger than what they'd started with. This is Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips, and this is what redemption looks like. Not a fairy tale ending where everything is perfect, but a real ending where imperfect people choose love anyway, where mistakes become lessons, where broken things become beautiful. Garrett Hayes invited his ex-wife to a Christmas party to humiliate her. She showed up with triplets and showed him who he could become. That's not just a story. That's a roadmap for anyone who has ever wondered if it's too late to change, if their mistakes are too big to overcome, if they've gone too far to come back. The answer is no. It's never too late. The mistakes are never too big. You're never too far gone. But change requires courage, humility, work, consistency, time. Garrett lost 4 years with his children. He can never get those back, but he showed up for every year after. And in doing that, he created a legacy that had nothing to do with bloodlines or money and everything to do with love and presence. So one final question before we close. What are you going to do differently tomorrow? Because this isn't just a story to consume and forget. This is an invitation to examine your life, your choices, your priorities, to ask yourself what really matters, to choose substance over performance, presence over possessions, love over pride. Make that choice. Take that first step. Do the hard work. Show up for the people who matter. Apologize for your mistakes. Build something real. And when you do, when you take that first brave step toward becoming who you're meant to be, come back and tell me about it. This community needs your story, your transformation, your proof that change is possible. Until next Tuesday, this is Dr. Phillips reminding you to choose love over pride, presence over performance, and always believe that broken things can become beautiful. I'll see you in the next story. And remember, this is Dr. Phillips reminding you to choose love over pride, presence over performance, and always believe that broken things can become beautiful. I'll see you in the next story. And remember, the best story you'll ever tell is the one you live.